All right, welcome to episode 557. Tonight we're talking green tree pythons with David Brahms of the Reptile Perch, formerly
Specialty Enclosure Designs.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man.
That's exactly why I changed the name.
Yeah, much better. Much better. I like it. So, Specialty Enclosure Designs is the former name. Reptile Perch is the new one. Love the logo and everything you got going on. Owen couldn't be here tonight. He had some things he had to take care of. So I got my protege over here on the side, the man that will take over the MPR network one day. Lucas Lee is here with us.
I don't know about all that, but hey, happy to be here.
Yeah. You want to go another 11 years with, keeping the show going? Come on, man.
It depends. It depends if Owen is willing to do it too.
Okay. Yeah. But one thing I wanted to shout out real quick before we get into it with David is we were on the Retic Lounge podcast, and we had a great time talking with those guys. If you haven't heard the Retic Lounge and you're into retics or want to learn about retics, you should check it out. They go off topic now a little bit, now that they're starting to branch out a bit, but great guys. They kind of remind me of NPR in the early days, but they're just focused on retics. So it's a show that's always in my queue, so it's always good to go. But I don't know. Did you have anything you want to hit on, Lucas, before we jump in?
No, I'm really excited to talk magic green snakes on a stick with the man himself.
Okay. So how you been, David? How
I've been great. Yeah.
That's
super
good.
Busy, just like everybody else, I'm sure.
Yeah. It never stops.
No. Only seems like it's getting worse, but anyway.
Yeah. No kidding. So I thought we would talk about Manokwari green trees. Is so like your collection, what would you say percentage wise is Manokwaris?
Let me think. Of my adults, it's probably almost half, maybe a little less than half of my adult collection. That's right now my adults. I think I'm running, or I have about 36 animals. Okay. And then if you include the babies that I'm raising up, there's probably another 35 there that I'm raising up. Yeah, a decent amount are Manokwari. Yep.
Okay.
And then those that aren't like straight Manokwari, they're heavily influenced with Manokwari. They're, they're crosses, but there's a lot of Manokwari on both sides.
So when we talk Manokwari, let me ask this. Do you consider the Cyclops Mountain stuff similar, the same, like where don't they usually get lumped in together?
Well, I mean, Manokwari falls under the pulcher subspecies, right? And the animal, that particular subspecies comes from the Bird's Head Peninsula of Papua New Guinea. And so you've got localities like Sarong, Manokwari, Arfak Mountain. Those are the types of animals that are typically found there. The Cyclops animals have a very distinct look. From Manokwari, you can typically, parse them out pretty easily just based on their phenotype. The Manokwari, if you're trying to differentiate them from the other subspecies, they tend to be on the smaller side. When they're babies, the pulcher and the viridis only have a single bar that runs through the eye itself. Whereas the other subspecies like the Azuria, like Biox, and all the others, they're going to have 3, and it's more pronounced on the yellow babies and the red. It's a lot easier to see that. And then as they get older, it becomes a lot less pronounced, so it's not as easy to see that. It's really only when they're really little.
Okay.
The Manokwari
really
also
interesting one.
The Manokwari also have a jet black tail, and whereas the other animals that come from the other part of the main part of the island, the subspecies, I forget how to pronounce it, but it's like Utarensis or something like that. They generally have like a white tail or a green tail, and then the other thing that you tend to notice with the Manokwari is particularly with the red babies and the adults that were red babies, the blue dorsal markings are very, very, they tend to be very sharp triangles like shark's teeth, whereas the other localities tend to be more rounded off on that triangle. So like Biox and Jayapura and the other localities, they don't have that really nice, crisp, sharp triangle that you can see that runs along the dorsal.
Okay.
Very cool.
I wonder why their tail is black as opposed to I would imagine it has.
It's all caught alluring,
Yeah.
When they're babies, they're eating small lizards primarily. And so, I don't know why one subspecies has a different color versus the other. It must be the prey that, they're selecting for in those areas tends to go for dark versus light or something like that would be my guess.
Yeah. That's kind of where I was going. But that's the thing that fascinates me with like learning about like the natural history of these snakes. We keep like these little details and like how they fit into their, survival, I guess, if you will.
Yeah.
It's cool.
How did the proportion of the green trees that you're keeping end up being so heavily Manokwari? Was that kind of meditated or did you start keeping them and just realize you liked them more than the others as you went, or how did that go?
Yeah, when I first started getting into green trees, the look that really drew me in was just the classic yellow baby sarong Manokwari type. Mm-hmm. The yellow animals when they grow up, the blue oftentimes along that dorsal tends to be a little more vibrant. It can be than what appears on red babies. And so that was originally what drew me in. And then once I started looking around and building a collection, I don't know what it was specifically, but I really liked the look of the Manokwari, and I just started grabbing individuals one at a time, whenever I could find them, and I just figured, not a lot of people were focusing on locality specific projects, so I figured that might be a good thing to do just to differentiate a little bit, and that turned out to be a good move because Manokwari, you just can't really get them. Currently, and I don't know how it's going to be going forward. That may change, but at least for now, in the last, 5-6 years, they're really non-existent in terms of imports. So yeah, I feel fortunate I was able to collect enough of them to get a project going, and that's been my focus since.
Awesome.
That's really cool. Yeah. I like the blue with the green is really nice. I bet you that pops in the sun. Like, whew.
It's really nice, and that's one of the things that I really enjoy working with them is because the Manokwari or the pulcher animals in general are known for having really nice blue dorsal markings, but they also have a lot of nice blue wash that can come out in the flanks and that sort of thing. And as you're reproducing them, you'll get individuals that pop out that have an extraordinary amount of blue in them. So that's really where I'm putting my focus now, is just trying to see if I can refine that more as I'm able to produce more.
Yeah, that's interesting. What's their temperament like as opposed to, like they say, in my experience, Biox are usually a little bit nippier. Arus are a little bit chill. Yeah,
I think they're in my opinion, they're all pretty much the same. It doesn't matter what locality you're talking about,
right?
Particularly captive born individuals, they're almost all dog tamed during the day, and then when the lights go out, it's anybody's game. So
it sounds like a lot of carpet pythons.
Right? Yeah. They're really not any different. So when it comes to dealing with them, you just try and time it so that if you have to do husbandry and things like that, you do it during the day, and then feed them at night, that kind of stuff.
Right.
I tend to, my philosophy with keeping these, I treat them more like tropical fish than I do other pets. They're hands off. I really like looking at them, but I don't like holding them and touching them. And I think that really plays into being successful with being able to reproduce them on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I kind of think like us, like really, I say this with all love. It's like us, the real hardcore snake nerds, if you will, are like more hands off. Type of approach, like.
Yep. Yeah, I don't need to hold them. It's it's never my attraction. I love looking at them.
Yeah, when you really realize that it's working against your interests and the animals in terms of stressing them out, it kind of gets hard to start to justify it after a while.
Yep.
Yeah.
I even feel that way when I'm herping. Like, I don't have to touch it, I don't have to. I'm just happy seeing it, like, doing its thing.
They're really cool to look at.
Yeah, heck yeah. One day I'll get to see a green tree in the wild. Definitely not a Manokwari, but
Well, I tell you what, I would love to go to Papua New Guinea if it wasn't so risky. People do it, but it's a risk.
Yeah, when you look on the government's website and it says "Do not go here."
Yeah,
it's probably best to stay away.
Yeah.
So
I'll tell you what, with Dan O'Leary being over there, I would imagine I think he was talking at one point of doing like ecotourism in Papua New Guinea and things like that, and that would be the perfect person to hook up with.
Yeah,
he looks like The Rock.
Yeah, right.
hide behind his left arm. Like,
exactly.
That I would go on because I would feel like you would feel like a little more comfortable that like who you're going with has guides and
he knows the area.
Yeah. That I would do, but I wouldn't fly there with Mr. Stone.
Although he has Rock in his name, he is not like The Rock. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have are you looking for in your group that you have, is it all the same type of look that you're going for? Did you handpick these animals, or is it just you sort of have different projects that you're working on? I know you said about the blue and whatnot, but is there any other thing you're doing?
So with the Manokwari, their availability wasn't super big at the time when I was trying to get individuals. So I grabbed whatever I could get my hands on at the time.
Right.
And phenotypically, what's that?
Was it a lot of imported animals?
Yeah. All of my animals are imported from Bushmaster as babies when I got them.
All right.
Yep. And I've raised them up since then.
Okay.
Yep. And phenotypically, there's some subtle differences between them, between all of them. But what's interesting is when you start pairing them and you're reproducing them, then that's when the magic seems to really happen, and you can start holding back animals that you really know are going to turn out to be something special. So that's kind of what I've been doing.
Okay.
I've been able to get some clutches out of these, just holding things back and getting them going.
Has there been one that you let go that you see somebody post up and you're like, damn, why didn't I keep that one?
Yeah. I have a couple animals that were some of the first ones that I got when I got into the hobby. And they are predominantly Manokwari. They have the Prada Manokwari line in their lineage. So
that's what I was thinking about when I said Cyclops Mountain. It was Prada. My bad.
Yeah. The male is a mix between a Prada Manokwari and a Cyclops Mountain, and then the female is also a Prada Manokwari, but she also has the Ophiological Services High Yellow and some Vinsky blood in her too. And when I paired them, it was my first go around pretty much with reproducing these guys. So I didn't really have a plan other than that. They both looked like really nice adult animals. And I figured it'd be good to pair them together. And specifically, since they had that Prada Manokwari on both sides, it would be good to combine them back together and see what comes out. And of that clutch, it was a really good pairing because I've had multiple individuals come out of that where they're, pretty much a very nice aqua blue or like a seafoam green blue or, that sort of thing. So they came up with really high blue percentage out of them.
I'm looking at Mako here on the screen behind me, and that is a crazy look with the blue.
Yep, that's the dam, and the sire is Dr. Jones, is what I call him. And I had some really nice animals pop out of there, and I sold some of them out of that first clutch before they changed. So I had no idea what was going to result from it, and turns out, at least one or two of them turned out to be, really high blue snakes. And so I, really regretted letting that go, and going forward, I have a much better idea as to what I'm looking at too, in terms of what the babies are and which ones show the most potential. So,
yeah, that must be a little bit of a challenge, right? I mean, selecting holdbacks before they are 2 years old.
Yeah, that's the thing with green trees is, a lot of times it's a roll of the dice. You don't know what you're going to get from a pairing, but luckily with that specific pairing, I've been able to do it multiple times. And the results have been very repeatable. And now I know exactly what to look for in the babies that have really high potential. And it's held true to that each time. But, if you're pairing animals together for the first time, it's a crapshoot. You have no idea what's going to come out of that. So
that is fun and also not fun at the same time.
Yeah. It's mostly fun, though. Even though I let one go that turned out to be a blue snake, I'm okay with it. I made more that looked just as nice,
Yeah, I always looked at that as like, okay, one got away, but now somebody's going to advertise that for you constantly.
Yep.
They're just going to price it up.
Becomes their pride and joy.
Right. They're going to
exactly.
Who produced that?
Yeah.
David Brahms. Oh, I got to hit him up.
Yeah.
I'm bracing myself for when that happens with last year's WOMAs.
Yep.
Should have kept more.
So what's their ontogenic color change like? I know some are extreme, some are not, so extreme depending on locality. What's it like for them?
So they're I guess you would consider them a rapid color change.
Okay.
Versus like Biak, which has a very prolonged color change that can take up to a few years to complete. Right. These guys generally, when they're roughly about a year old, is when they'll do the change.
Okay. And
it's not as crazy and wacky as the Biaks or any of the crosses that you see. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
But what you can expect to see, or what I've noticed in my individuals is when you're looking at the babies, you've got the really dark or black, border markings or dorsal markings, right? Mm-hmm. So those are going to go blue. But the other thing that I like to look at is around those markings, you'll notice that the background color, the red background color, if you notice that there's like a darker shading or maroon shading that goes around the triangles, and then when you get down to the flanks, maybe the shading's a little bit lighter. Mm-hmm. What I've seen in my collection is all the animals that have that darker maroon goes blue usually.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I'm looking for too in a lot of my animals that I'm holding back is, it's great if you get really strong, nice black dorsal markings, but it's also that other stuff going on in the background that you want to pay attention to see if you're going to maximize the blue potential out of them.
Yeah, I sort of followed a similar path with trying to figure out how carpets were going to turn out. I would just hold back everything and just take pictures of them each shed, and then study the pictures and say, oh, okay, this I look for this, and it's somewhat reliable. Not always, but
The other thing I've noticed too with this locality specifically, I'm not sure if it's the same with everybody, but I would assume it is who has Manokwari. That the animals that I have gain blue with age. And, it's not like a hormonal blue with a female. They just tend to get more blue as time goes on. So you'll notice like on the individual scales, there'll be a portion of it that's blue. And then just over time that tends to increase. So the animal becomes more and more blue. Another thing I've noticed in my collection that has been happening is Manokwari also can have a fair amount of white speckling along their dorsal pattern. And the individuals that I have in my collection, they develop a few of them at the color change, but then as time goes on, they gain more of it in time. So I've got animals that are roughly 4 years old, and like just in the last year or so, they've definitely gained more white scales than they did when they were little babies. So that's another, interesting thing that happens with these.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Oh man. Still sick. You can't get rid of it, man. It's been what, 3 weeks now? Oh my god.
Oh god. Yeah. It's that mystery illness that everybody's
it just won't go away. Oh my gosh. Is there other localities that you would be interested in breeding into the Manokwaris, or are you just strictly I guess, where do you fall on that?
Am I a purist? No.
Yeah, no. Okay.
No.
Right.
I like doing both. I think it's important to have a collection that you're focusing somewhat on locality projects, but then also on the hybrid and crossing projects too, specifically with green trees. I think it just adds a lot more fun to the whole thing, and the outcomes can get really wacky. Last year I produced some really wacky stuff that has been really fun to watch, raise and change. But specifically like the Manokwari right now, if I can, I'm going to keep it Manokwari to Manokwari. And as the collection grows, I will cross them out a little bit too, just for the hell of it, and see what I can produce. I've got one individual that I purchased as a Manokwari, but it turned out to actually not be. It was a cross. And it looks like it was a cross between a Manokwari and a Biak. And it's maintained a lot of yellow into adulthood. There's a lot of potential there when you start taking an animal like that and then crossing it into some other things, and you get some really wild stuff that pops out. So, that's where the fun really begins. And then for me, specifically the Manokwari stuff, I want to maximize the amount of blue on the animals if I can. That's the only thing I'll be doing with the straight locality stuff. Gotcha.
Is that why the Manokwari? And again, this is just my perception, and I could be wrong, but it seems like that's one of the go-to localities when you're doing designer stuff. Is it for the blue? Does it throw the blue into those pairings?
Yeah, I would say that Manokwari is a good one to introduce into designer projects specifically for that. You can get some individuals that are really strikingly beautiful with a lot of blue, and if you're looking to add some new genetics into a project, that's a great way to go. It's just their availability is so low. It's hard to, snatch them up. They're as rare as hen's teeth a lot of times. Yeah.
It puts you in a good spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why. I guess everybody was chasing it's the same thing that happened with carpets, chasing the morphs and not necessarily going after, the locality stuff. And then, it's all cyclical, right? Everybody breeds this and then there's none of that. And then everybody switches to that and then there's none of this, so it just keeps going round and round.
Yeah. I don't know. It just seems like going forward, I think, locality availability, I doubt that it's going to get better.
Right.
I think it's only going to get worse with time. So if anybody's thinking about jumping into green trees or things like that, you should definitely, as part of your projects, focus on a locality while you can. And grab them,
Yeah. You not only do you have the importation issue but it seems like, I don't know. I don't see a lot of imports coming in at all. Am I wrong?
Outside of Biaks,
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, I got to be honest, I don't really look that often as to what's available for import stuff. I've pretty much, closed the collection and just working with my own stuff now. But yeah, it's not like it was, 6, 8, 10 years ago at all.
Yeah.
It changed a lot.
Right.
Green trees, I think primarily what happened with them is, you had the facility there in Papua New Guinea, the Bushmaster farm, that was doing a lot of, locality pairings and things like that. And their head guy unfortunately passed away. And it seems like ever since then, it's just never been the same,
I remember that when that, I remember that. Interesting. I'd like to get, I think I don't know. I just don't see, I guess I'm not looking in the right places. But I just don't see a lot of just, like a locale, like I'm looking for, I that's how I came across your site again. And I was just like, oh yeah, we haven't talked to him in a while. I was like, look, he's got these Manokwari. Okay. Yeah. That's one. I'm looking more for like the actual species, subspecies type of thing. I know that's like probably not cool in the chondro world. I don't know. Some people like it. Some people don't,
Yeah.
Well, for a while you were really trying to get some Moroccis, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, can't get those anymore.
Yeah.
They don't even exist, right?
Yeah.
Right. Do you think, Dave, that it's true that what Eric's noticing, are these animals really just not there to be found? Or is it a lot of kind of, you have to know somebody, they're not going to be posted on the internet, backroom type stuff?
Yeah, well, are you talking like specifically imports or just captive bred stuff?
Just the different localities in general.
Yeah,
I suppose.
I mean, generally the locality stuff, the supply has been imports,
right?
And it's been, I think, a really slow train for people to hop on in terms of picking up locality projects. I think by and large, most people didn't pay a lot of attention to that, and we're just mixing things together,
right?
So I think just because of that, locality specific type animals have been hard to find just because nobody was really focusing on them as much as they probably should have been.
Right.
And then with COVID and everything else that happened, the supply chain got all messed up, and it still doesn't seem to have repaired itself overseas. So, the availability of import, baby, locality specific stuff with a good variety evaporated. And, some people think that's never coming back. But who knows,
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird when you see more carpet pythons coming in from Papua New Guinea than you do green trees,
Yeah.
I remember in the 10 years ago, it was the opposite. I'm looking everywhere I can try to find an imported carpet python. You can't get it.
Yeah, weren't around. Yeah,
but you could get
green trees up the Yang.
Sul, Sarong.
Yeah.
What is it? Wapia? Some, all these weird. You're like, where the hell is
Jayapura?
that?
All kinds of great places.
Quick, looking on Google Earth on your phone. Where's this at? Okay. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Do you worry that shortage and perhaps the difficulty for the layman to actually identify what they're looking at from pictures? Do you think that it's kind of creating an environment where people can just say, oh yeah, this is a that. And, most people just see the red or yellow baby and say, great, I guess it's worth $2,000 then.
Yeah, 100%. I think that, I think that's always been the case though.
Okay.
That importers oftentimes will put labels on things that they think are going to sell better. And I've been a victim to it a couple times. It can be very difficult to properly identify a locality as a baby. And then only to find out that when they start going through their color change, there's a lot of really weird stuff that starts popping up, and you're like, "There's no way that's a pure locality animal."
Right.
So that definitely does happen, and people do take advantage of that for sure.
Sounds like maybe there's not much that one can do.
No, not really.
Yeah.
You just have to be, you have to do your homework and do the best you can when selecting animals. But, generally speaking, if, you go into a pet store or something and you see something labeled as a Manokwari and it's a red baby or whatever, you're like, there's no way that, that's, it's highly unlikely.
Right. Yeah. Probably wouldn't be there.
Right. Yeah. Your best bet is to go to people that have been working with specific projects and have a good reputation and you can trust them. And that's the way to go if you're trying to jump in.
Do you see more, like even more of the I'll compare it to carpet pythons, right? It seems like that the new generation of people coming into carpet pythons are more into, I don't want to say pure, but you know what I mean when I'm saying like the species type of thing, or localities or stuff like that, where it's like not specifically focused as much on the morph. And when I say morphs, I guess what I'm comparing it to with Greench's designers, right? Like, do you see that shifting? Is that shifting at all, or is that?
I think it depends. It depends on localities. So you've got camps within the green tree python community. So you've got people who they love Biak, and that's where they put all their focus, and then you've got people that are into Aru, and that's where they put their focus. But then when you start getting into some of the other localities that aren't being imported anymore or not at the same level, it's difficult to find people that are focusing on those projects. They're a lot more rare. And then I would say by and large, people are into the designer stuff still in the community, because you get some really amazing looking animals.
I mean, yeah.
It's hard to argue with it.
Yeah, I mean, when you got the sickness and animals like that, that's just like what's the one that's over in Portugal? Mosaic. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, Pedro.
That was crazy.
Yeah. But I'll tell you what, the locality stuff is absolutely drop dead gorgeous too. Look at Ryan's, Arus and the Manokwari stuff is, can be ridiculous too. And just all that's really nice. I guess it just depends on, what you like and where you want to go,
I think in general, that was always what drew me to like Morelia in general. Just this genus of snake is kind of like there's so much variety within this group of snakes that's just like, holy shit.
It's wild.
Yeah.
That's what
flavor
really
for everything.
What drew me into the green trees is just the variety is phenomenal. And then I like not having everything figured out. It makes life more interesting, and green trees will definitely, make you scratch your head sometimes. And there's a lot of stuff that you have to do to, get them to reproduce successfully. And then, so you've got all that husbandry part of it that we still haven't completely figured out. Although it's pretty good now. But then when you start pairing them together and reproducing them, that's when things get really exciting, because you just have no idea what's going to come out oftentimes, particularly if you're doing designer stuff. It just makes
and then even when
thing.
It's trap, you got to wait.
Right.
It's like a scratcher.
Yeah. So to me, they're like the perfect snake to get into, because, there's a few things about them. One, they're small, which to me is really important. You don't need a lot of space to keep them. The husbandry is actually very easy. I think a lot of people are still afraid of them because they've heard a lot of horror stories, but there's been so much work that hobbyists have put into them that, a lot of the kinks have been worked out, and, the success rate of keeping them is gone up exponentially.
Right.
And they're small, they're really easy to keep. They, as far as like cleaning their cages, these things go to the bathroom like once a month, so that part's great.
Right.
And then really, you just have to make sure you're keeping them well hydrated with clean water. That's pretty much the one thing you have to do on a very regular basis. But,
I think that's where I screwed up a lot when it comes to green trees is the hydration part of it, I guess at the time when I was keeping them, the typical practice was, once a week, changing the water bowl type of thing. Well, if it was messed up, then you do it before, but that would sort of be your routine, and carpets do fine with that. But I don't know. I think
sometimes there's just shit luck too, particularly if you got, I don't know what you got originally, but if you got imported babies,
I did.
It's a roll of the dice. I do my own fecal exams and things here. So when I brought my animals in, I was doing floats and just checking the collection as I was, bringing stuff in and screening them for things. Every single animal that I brought in as a baby import had protozoans and nematodes in there. So it's just, something that you have to pay attention to when you're bringing them in. A lot of people don't do anything. They just let it ride and they turn out fine. But then there's the occasional animal that, maybe it's a little bit stressed, maybe, because the water changes are too infrequent or who knows, but they just can't handle it and they drop dead. And, to me, I look at green tree pythons, maybe they're analogous to like keeping discus fish kind of.
Okay.
discus are known to be very temperamental and hard to keep, but when you get the parameters right, they're bulletproof pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think the same thing goes with green trees. Once you get a few minor things in place, then you should be rock solid. It shouldn't be difficult. And the only time that you may run into issues is when you try to breed them. That's when things start going kind of hairy.
That seems to be Justin Smith's mantra. It's like once you get them dialed in, they're easy.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
is that from the earlier point with hydration? Is just frequently changing the water? Is that kind of your strategy with that, or is there anything with spraying, soaking, and any of that?
Yeah, what I do is I try and make sure that they have clean, fresh water a couple times a week. So that's, twice a week, go through, give them fresh water, unless it's been soiled. If I go through the collection a couple times a day, and if anything's messed in their bowl, it gets changed immediately. Or if they've messed in their cage, that gets cleaned immediately. Right. But yeah, the hydration is very important. They're rainforest animals, and, they're used to getting rained on and drinking a lot of water and having a lot of water availability. So it's quite important for them. I spray occasionally. But primarily it's making sure that they have nice fresh water available. They're just like all the other snakes that we keep. The second that you put fresh water in there, they know it's fresh. Yeah. And that's when you'll notice them coming down to drink and that kind of stuff. So it's pretty critical to make sure that you're on top of that.
How about ventilation?
Yeah, that's critical too.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. All of my cages have a lot of ventilation in them. And what I've done I use ambient heat in my snake rooms. I don't have individual radiant heat panels in any of the cages. The only time I do add supplemental heat is when I've got gravid females, and I'll give that to them until they lay. But I also just make sure that there are plenty of ventilation holes or screens or whatever in the enclosures that I have. And then the way that I run the room is I use those fans that you would have to dry floors. I forget what they actually call them, but they have a very specific flow of air that comes out, and you can reposition it, angle it any way you want. And I actually hang those from the ceiling, and I have it grab the air from the ceiling with the thing pointed down at an angle, so it kind of bisects my room at an angle, and it's constantly churning over. And I've got that's
genius.
And I've got the floor. I've got the oil-filled heater on the floor directly below the fan unit. So the heat comes up, hits the fan, and just gets pushed down and circulated through the room. So there's a lot of air movement in my snake rooms because I use that. I think it's definitely important to make sure they have good airflow on top of it.
Yeah, I think that's cool. Yeah.
Is it
like
one of those
oven?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Is it one of those, like, I think I have one at the floor at my store. When it rains, you have to put it on the floor, and it like sits flat. Something you can it's kind of got like a round end on this side, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's round in the back, and then it has like a square opening in the front. So
I might have to take that from work.
It worked really well.
You guys don't need this anymore.
Eric, why are you drilling holes in the ceiling?
Oh, that's really a good idea. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Is there anything else you do husbandry wise? How about heat? In terms of you mentioned ambient, but I know one of the things that I have heard a lot with green trees is that they were perpetually kept too hot. Historically, where do you fall on that?
Yeah, that was definitely the case. People were, keeping them with like 90-degree hot spots and things like that. And then, after listening to Daniel Natouche and seeing all the information that came out in like the last decade, you learned that no, they don't live like that. And so what I do is I run the room during the day. It's roughly between 82, maybe to 84 in that range. Try and keep it around 82. Okay. And then at nighttime, during the summer months, I'll do a slight temperature drop, only by a couple degrees for nighttime. And that's pretty much how I run the room. And they don't need a temperature gradient or anything like that. And they do great.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I know I wasn't in Papua New Guinea, but when we were in Cairns, I couldn't get over how humid it was.
Yeah.
And I see you got that big fish tank behind you.
Yeah. These rooms, it's great for the snakes, but it's almost not tolerable to be in here,
really?
like the time. Yeah, because it's like a super high humidity and it's in the 80s and it's like, wow, it's steamy in here, but it's nice. I'm in Maine and it's the dead of winter. This is a great place to be sometimes.
That's awesome.
Oh, wow. So you're struggling. You would struggle too. Like, well, you probably would struggle worse with the dry heat, from the house and whatnot. Yeah.
And that's why I have these guys behind me. So I've got 2 snake rooms and they both, I run them the same way. So I've got that floor fan that recirculates all the air in the room. And then I have fish tanks in each room with, aerators in them, so you're pushing room air through the water. And then I grow live plants out of the top, so all of that is contributing to the humidity in the room. And it works like a charm. It works great. And plus you get the added benefit of being able to tinker with fish and stuff too.
Right. So, as somebody that I just did my first live planted aquatic setup in the last year or 2, I'm very impressed with what's behind you. It's not easy.
No, it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah. You have like your own little ecosystem going on, and that's pretty cool.
That's the main rainforest.
Okay, exactly.
Wow. Okay. All right. What about? I guess since we're on the subject of just how you overall keep, what's your approach with feeding? I know there's a lot of different takes on mice, rats, weekly.
Yeah, I think first off, I think people tend to be ridiculous in this hobby. They get they act like
just
things
leave
are
it
carved.
there.
Yeah. Things are carved in granite, and you can only do it one way, and that sort of thing. And that's all bullshit. In the wild, these guys, they're eating rats. So you can feed them rats in captivity. You just need to make sure that they're sized appropriately. Right. And then the other thing is if you're doing that, you just need to make sure that you're not, don't have them on a 7 to 10 day feeding schedule. That's not how they're supposed to be, feed them. And then, you wait a long time before you feed them again. They don't need to be fed on high frequency, particularly when you're feeding something like rats.
Right.
So, me personally, what I do is I feed adult mice only because that's the way I started, and there's been no reason for me to change. I could feed rats if I wanted to, but I just, never felt the need.
Right.
And then the way I go about it, because everything for me with the adult collection is gearing towards breeding season. So I try and run everything around that. So the way I do it is like maybe in spring to mid-summer, I feed on a fairly regular basis. So females, I'm probably feeding them once every couple weeks. Males, maybe even less than that. And then come midsummer, I begin a fast for all of them. So I'll stop feeding altogether. The males, I'll continue to feed periodically, but the females, I don't. And the males, I'll keep feeding them, but it'll be at a less frequency than what I was doing before. I eyeball it. If someone looks like they're not maintaining good body weight, I'll throw them a meal.
Right.
And then I'll do that fasting starting probably July, maybe early August, and I'll do it till about October is when the length of time that I do it. And then once I'm finished with that fasting cycle, I'll start kicking in with regular feedings with the females specifically, small meals, and I'll hit them pretty aggressively. Sometimes if I'm really trying to get a female to go that year, I'll even feed them like twice a week, again with very small meals. But feeding them on a regular basis. And then what I do, which is another important part of these guys, because they don't go to the bathroom that frequently. And I think it's just a symptom of us keeping them in captivity. They're not getting hit with rain. They're not able to roam around as much as they do in the wild. So they tend to hold on a lot longer than you would like. So when I'm doing that rapid feed cycling with the females, I'll go ahead and I'll run them through a rain chamber after they've had a couple weeks worth of feedings in them, just to make sure that I'm clearing them out and they're not building up. And then that, gives them an opportunity to clear out, but they also take advantage of that and get a really long drink while they're in there too. Most every time I put them in there, they spend a lot of time drinking, and then they'll go. And then I will continue that feeding during that breeding cycle as I'm pairing. So I'll introduce the male, and I'll try and get the female to keep accepting regular meals, and I'll do that unless she's starting to look like really obese. I'll continue that process. But if they start looking chunky, there's no need to continue it. They've got enough body reserves and everything else that should be there in order to get a successful clutch out of them. So, if I see that, I'll ramp way back on the feedings and just kind of watch them. And then I'll keep them together the whole time until, I see her ovulate and or go off feed and then eventually ovulate. So it
sounded like the fasting period coincided with, you said earlier you were turning the temps down a little bit at night during the summer. Do you purposefully correlate those two things to try and spur a little bit of a breeding cycle?
I forgot to mention that. So my approach on getting these guys to reproduce was, some people do feed cycling, some people do temperature cycling, some people have a light cycle. I'm like, why not do everything? And it works. I've had really good success breeding these guys, and I think it's because I do that. I do a really good feed cycle. And then when the winter months come, I increase that nighttime temperature drop from a few degrees to, maybe instead of being at like 78, 80 degrees at night, I'll drop it down to like 75, 74 degrees. It's not a huge drop, but it's still a drop.
Right.
And then I'm in Maine, and we have a pretty substantial change in the amount of daylight throughout the year. And both my snake rooms, they've got a window that goes to the outside, so I get a natural light cycle. I don't plan it; it just happens that way, and I don't know if it influences them being successful or wanting to breed or not, but it's there. And that's how I do it. I throw everything at them. It's kind of a shotgun approach.
I heard a talk one time, and the guy that was talking about it was talking about how when snakes, just like anything, right? You're affected by the light cycle as far as like when you're going to sleep, certain hormones are put into your system to make you sleep. And then, the opposite happens when you're awake. Yep. So I never thought about it in that type of way. Like I never thought about that way in terms of snakes.
Yeah.
Biochemically.
Yeah, I guess so. Beneath the scales.
Right.
What? Some people know. That is an interesting point,
just
right?
A weird thing I was thinking.
The reason why I say I don't know if the light cycle really does impact them or not is because, they come from the equator. They don't really get a light cycle there. So it's not something that they would naturally experience. But I think when you start throwing variables where, any kind of environmental changes, I think tend to be a cue to them that, something's different now, and, it might be a good time to reproduce. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I know the idea of like it's 12-12, at the equator, but I guess that's where I was going with it, is sort of like, but they're still releasing those hormones. So people that don't even provide light at all, let's say, which I don't, if you're keeping them in some kind of rack or something like that, which I don't think most.
Even then, they're still going to get.
Yeah, they're going to get some type of light, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm. My brain was just going
in a hypothetical, like purely dark room forever, though. Yeah, you might run into problems.
Yeah.
Scratch that. Okay, so you kind of follow a season then, right?
Yep, I definitely do. Okay. So my breeding season is I start pairings around October, and I'll continue doing that until I start getting results, which usually happens at the beginning of the next year. I'll start seeing some things happening. This year I've got, they're not all timed perfectly together by any means. But generally come January, I should have a female or two that ovulates or, is heading in that direction.
I think I took this picture from your Facebook page, but that female is ovulating, right?
Yep. She did.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
She ate the discus fish.
Right. Exactly.
I saw that picture and I was like, I don't know if it's just the angle or whatever, but I'm like, wow.
No, green tree pythons are well known for having pretty substantial ovulations. It looks like a lot of times they swallowed a loaf of bread or a football or something.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It looks incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And so you're keeping them together even when do you separate them?
Yeah. So right then and there, she ovulated, he's out.
Oh, okay.
That's when I do it.
Just the ovulation.
Yeah.
And are you team nest box or team just put moss and some cork on the floor?
Yeah, I do things super simple. My nest box is a 6-quart shoebox with the lid with a 2-inch hole cut in the lid, and I fill it with dry sphagnum, and I throw that in the cage after they do their pre-lay shed. And the females that I have been really good about seeking that out and camping out in there. Generally, when mine have their pre-lay shed, it's about 16 days later when they lay their eggs. And within a couple days after that pre-lay shed, they're roaming at night looking for a place to camp out and see if it's suitable for them to have this clutch. So I'll put that 6-quart shoebox in there and they'll go in and they'll utilize that. Nothing fancy needed. It works like a charm.
Right.
It's great. Yeah.
You ever let mom keep the eggs?
I haven't yet. No. It's one of those things where I'm like, well, I'm sure it's cool. But I just feel like it puts a lot of stress on the female unnecessary stress. And, it would be purely for my enjoyment to see that. And I don't see the need to put them through it. Some people think that there's a benefit to having her incubate the eggs, and there may be. But I've had enough good luck with, raising them artificially that I haven't taken that plunge yet.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I it's probably all just, my experience with maternal. Again, this is the carpets, but yeah, they look terrible afterwards.
Yep.
I don't know. Awful. I mean, they seem to be a bit bigger, but it's so hard to tell when you're doing 10 clutches to really have any kind of substantial data.
I don't think they are. From what I looked at and talking to Professor DiNardo at Arizona,
right?
In that episode with Nick that will never be posted apparently, but it's interesting, right? Because there's also drawbacks to letting mom do it in captivity outside of her body condition.
Sure.
If even if the temperatures are even a little bit off, she will choose temperature or humidity. She'll choose to asphyxiate the eggs to keep temperature or humidity where she wants them. And that can have negative consequences. You got to be dialed.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. I think it's cool to see. Yeah. You did, Dave. You said it perfect. It's kind of like, it's cool to see, and, makes a nice picture for the Facebook.
Yeah.
Or a book.
Right. Right.
But, it's not something to swear at.
Nothing against anybody that does that. I'm not throwing stones at anybody by any means, but
totally gotcha.
Me personally,
I think too. Do you think that I kind of have this feeling that why the carpet people are more likely to do it and the chondro people are less likely to do it is because of the stress factor, right? Because you already have. I mean, to me, it just seems like, and again, this could just be my experience, but I think you said earlier, it's like you can get them dialed in rock solid, but then as soon as you start to breathe them, it's where you can run into more trouble. Obviously, that's because of the stress that you're putting them under for the breeding. And it just seems like they handle it differently, I guess. I don't know if it's just because their environment is more stable, and where carpets are more, up
Carpets
and down.
are just more robust.
Yeah, maybe.
They're a more robust animal when compared to a green tree. Green trees are easy to keep in captivity, but the fact is that they can be a little more sensitive to things. So I think, if you're jumping up into the green tree world and you want to start keeping them, you just have to be a little bit more on point with your husbandry. They don't tolerate neglect as much as some of the other snakes do. That's really the main thing with them. And then, the females, they, some of them can look absolutely haggard after they lay their eggs, and they look like they're on death's doorstep. So I couldn't even imagine allowing that female to try and maternally incubate the eggs. It would be a huge stress on her. Yeah. And then, couple that with the fact that some of these animals are incredibly expensive, and the
rarity
aspect, that risk, right?
Yeah, sure.
All of that. So,
why put unnecessary, chances you could take with hatching the clutch?
Yep.
With something so,
I mean, I definitely wouldn't do it if I was hatching out, $2,500 babies.
Right.
So,
yeah.
No chance.
Not doing it with the blackheads.
God, they'd eat their own eggs or something stupid. I swear.
Yeah, they probably would, right?
They probably would.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. So, what's your approach with the eggs? I mean, I know I have this picture that I'll put up that I found, which I thought was just really cool. So you can explain to me what's going on in the.
I tend to do it a little bit different from everybody else right now. So my incubator itself is just a big cooler baiter. So I use a big igloo cooler as my incubator, and with heat tape.
Old school.
And I built some platforms in there, and I have a water well in the bottom of the incubator. And then I also use an aquarium air pump to trickle a steady supply of fresh air into the incubator at all times. And then the eggs, the way that I prefer to do it is I use these Cambro food storage containers with the lids that they come with. And I incubate them directly into vermiculite, just like you used to do 30 years ago with everything. And the only difference that I do is that I don't do a straight 1-to-1 mix with the water and the vermiculite by weight. I use a little bit less water. So it's maybe like a 90% or 85% of a 1-to-1, for the water ratio. So I go a little bit less on the water, and then I bury the eggs maybe 25 to 30% up the height. And then my egg boxes themselves, I've got a hole on one end that's always open, a small hole. So they have fresh air is able to go into the egg box at all times throughout the whole incubation process. And then I tinker year on year with my incubation temps. So generally speaking, 87 degrees is a safe place to be to incubate these eggs, but I've been dropping the temp the past few years. This last year, I did it at like 86.5. And then this year, I'm going to do it more closer to 86 degrees. And the whole point on that is just to allow them a little bit slower development time, and to don't rush them out of the egg so that they can fully absorb all the yolk and all that before they hatch. That's pretty much how I go about it. And then that thermometer, that's a pretty important thing that I think a lot of people mess up on with incubation, is getting their temperatures right and actually knowing what temperature they're actually cooking their eggs at. There is a shit ton of variability in thermometers, particularly ones that you just buy off the shelf or from Amazon. They can be off by a couple degrees even. So if there's one thing that I want to give as a tip to anybody that's looking to get into this and breed them, spend the money on a NIST calibrated lab thermometer so that when you get it that it's actually been calibrated and the temperature that it's reading, you're going to have faith in that, and then you can use that as your standard to dial in your thermostat that's running the incubator. I think that's pretty important, and specifically anybody who's using like those
that is a fantastic tip.
those can be way off. The heat guns are horrible. So you just got to be really careful.
The ones with the little sniper red light, like you're telling me that's not right?
Right. There can be a lot of variability. And, be prepared to spend some money on a lab calibrated thermometer. It'll cost you a couple $100, but in the long run, it's worth it.
That is very interesting.
But if you're hatching out, even $500 animals,
it's worth it.
Yeah. I mean,
worth it.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of people struggling incubating green tree python eggs.
Yeah.
I think there are two main reasons for that, maybe three. One is I don't think they really know what temperature they're cooking their eggs at. So they could potentially be hotter than they think they are. Okay. The other thing is they allow their eggs to get wet one way or another, and these eggs can be very sensitive to getting water droplets on them. So if you're using an egg box, you want to probably have it tilted so that if any condensation forms on the lid, it can roll off before it drops onto the eggs themselves. And then you also want to make sure that something isn't wicking the water from below. If you're using a water well or like a sim container, make sure nothing's wicking up and condensating on the eggs. I've seen a lot of people who have struggled where, the top of the egg looked great, but the bottom, there's actually condensation that's been collecting there and kills the egg. And then the other thing I think is having an appropriate amount of fresh air circulation available to the eggs as they're going through the whole process of growing.
That is what stood out to me most about your setup. I've never heard of anybody running the tube of like an aquarium aerator to facilitate gas exchange in the incubator. Did you think of that yourself? And how long have you been doing that?
I think I thought of it myself. I think
so too.
It could be I saw it somewhere. I honestly don't remember. I've done it from
really
the get-go.
Smart.
Yeah, so I put a little valve on it so that I'm not pumping a ton of air because obviously you're trying to maintain temps. And it's just enough so that all day long, 24 hours a day, there's a trickle of fresh air that goes into that incubator.
Yeah. Dang. I'm going to do that.
Yeah, it works well. Yeah.
So did you drill a hole for the tubing?
I did.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Through the side of the igloo cooler. And
I mean, we know that the gas exchange is important for eggs, but most people aren't actually doing anything about that except maybe opening the door every now and then to, check on the lid or something.
Right.
Yeah. And when I was thinking about this, I was like, I want to make sure that I can supply them with fresh air. But then you're also, how do I balance that with making sure that I'm not drying them out? Right. So, because my egg box are ventilated and I want to make sure that I'm not, desiccating the air and causing issues for the eggs. So that's why not only do I run them in a moistened substrate, but the whole incubator itself is a wet incubator. The entire bottom of the cooler is water.
Do you put your air stone in the water?
I don't. Okay. I don't have the need for that. Okay. But what I do have a computer fan mounted on the inside, so there's a lot of air circulation going on in there. Yeah. And then I just have the air pump, pumping air directly into the incubator.
I love it. That is very creative.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah. What's the have you noticed anything? What's the time frame when you've been dropping the temps from when they hatch from when you had them at higher temps? Is it obviously a little longer? How much longer?
Yeah. So when I was running at about 87 degrees, give or take, maybe 87.1, whatever. They were taking about 49 to 50 days before they would hatch. And then when you drop the temp by a degree, it's going to take another 3 days, 4 days for them to hatch. But also too, with my collection, I've noticed that they don't all hatch at the same time. So, I've got eggs all in the same egg box, and you'll notice as you're approaching the time when they should start pipping, you'll have some eggs that are really dented in. So it means that they've consumed most, if not all, of their yolk. And then you've got some that are still like really plump. And what I like to do now, when I first got going on this, I got clutches, I would have an egg with pip. and I would panic, and I'm like, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to manually pip all of them now, so that I can guarantee they're not going to drown the egg and they're going to hatch. That works, but what I found was that the eggs that were still really plump, those animals were not ready, and they took longer to get out of that egg. Yeah. So now I look to make sure that, the egg definitely has dented in a fair amount before I'll think about manually pipping. Otherwise, I'm going to let it ride until I start seeing that change. It's usually only by a few more days that you'll see them do that.
Okay. Do you have this is something that I often think about, that I don't know if it's the amount of eggs in a box and what's the size of the box. Do you? Yeah.
So in my collection, because I'm dealing with primarily Manokwari type animals, they're all on the smaller side. So my females are pretty small.
Okay.
They're definitely below 1,000 grams. If I were to guess, I don't weigh them, but if I were to guess, they're probably around 800 grams roughly. Okay. So they're not big animals by any means, and they've all been very consistent. I tend to get about 12 to 13 eggs in every clutch, regardless of the female.
Right.
And so what I do is I forget the actual size of them, but they're these Cambro boxes. I would guess and say they're probably 15 inches long, maybe by 10 inches wide, and I think they're like 5 or 6 inches deep.
Okay.
Roughly.
Right.
And I can put the whole clutch in one of those boxes.
In one of those. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. And then, they're pipping out, or you're cutting them out, depending on, and once they're all out, are you taking them out individually as they come out and setting them up, or are you waiting until they all hatch out then?
Yeah. So when they do start hatching, I will remove them periodically throughout the day. If a new one has come out, I'll go ahead and get it out of there and get it into its own 6-quart shoebox.
Okay.
Yep.
Probably with some cool perching.
In
those shoe boxes.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. How has that experience been with designing these things while working with them? I mean, are you constantly evolving ideas when it comes to that?
Not lately. So when I first got started, yes. The best way to go about these things, and when you're trying to design stuff, is to design things that you're actually working with, so that when necessity is the mother of invention. So if I am working with green trees and I see something where I'm like, boy, I really wish I had something that did X, Y, Z, that's when I'll, start tinkering and create it and experiment with my own collection and dial it in. And then I've come up with a suite of products that work really well for me. Or I've worked with customers where they came to me and said, hey, I have this need for something. Can you do this? And I'll tinker and come up with it. And if it works, then I'll make that a part of the portfolio and put it up on the site for people to buy.
Okay.
But that process was a lot of fun and surprising, really. I got into that in 2016, I think it was, and it grew exponentially. And I'm pretty much doing it full time now. So I do that.
That's fantastic.
And it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love, I just love when people sort of push keeping reptiles into the future with the technology that we have now. I think that me and Owen used to argue about this all the time, because he would be like, oh, if it's not broke, why have to fix it? And it's like, oh my God, man, there's so much we don't know. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I think that's my least favorite phrase.
Yeah. It's no fun being stagnant.
No.
Well, and then it's a false binary.
Yeah.
And
it's funny too. Along those lines, like advancing husbandry, like UVB. How UVB has become like the biggest thing since sliced bread. With all animals in captivity. And when I started my collection, I think I started this in like 2012 when I started getting green trees. I decided back then I was going to try supplementing with UVB, and I've been doing it since then. Not on the whole collection, just on a handful of individuals. And I can tell you this: I have seen absolutely no difference whatsoever in the animals that have been under UVB versus those that do not get any of it. Right. Maybe there's something that they get from it, but there have been there's been nothing that I can pinpoint as being something that benefited from that being as part of their husbandry. And, I did it for a few reasons. One was, prolapses in baby green tree pythons are incredibly common.
Yes.
And that's definitely something that I've experienced in my collection a handful of times. Every year I've got babies that will prolapse, unfortunately. And back then when I was doing heavy research and trying to figure out how am I going to do all this and what are the things to look for, and knowing prolapses was one of the things. I had read an article where somebody interviewed Vladimir over at the Bushmaster facility. Yeah. And at that time, they thought that the root cause of it for them was that there was not enough calcium being put into the yolk for the eggs to develop the neonates properly. And they said what they saw was that when they were doing fecal exams on the babies that prolapse, they saw a larger amount of shed teeth in the fecal exams. So they thought that they were deficient in vitamin D. They weren't holding teeth. They were shedding them. And then those would get bound up in the intestines and cause a prolapse. So my thought was, well, I'll supplement the females with UVB and to try and boost their vitamin D levels. And I also periodically I do vitamin supplement these guys too periodically when I'm going through the breeding process. That didn't solve that problem at all. I saw no difference in prolapsing on animals that were getting calcium and UVB supplementation versus clutches where I didn't provide that at all. And since then I've modified what I think is the root cause. Hydration, yes, can play into that, but I think that plays more into adult animals that prolapse, which is way more rare. Right. The babies prolapsing, I am almost convinced now it has to do with the diet that we provide them in captivity, feeding them pinky mice. There is no roughage, there's no fiber, there's nothing there to help facilitate moving that through the intestine. If it had hair on it, that would certainly help a lot more. And what I've noticed is when an animal, you can tell when an animal is potentially going to prolapse. You see diarrhea everywhere in their enclosure after you feed them. And what that tells me is they're struggling with passing that food item that you gave them. Right. And it's not coming out as a nice solid bolus or whatever. And, and I think it's not just that. I think it's a combination of that and then perhaps a developmental thing with individual animals. So whatever the connective tissue is that holds the intestine in place against the body maybe isn't as robust in some babies. And combine that with this shitty food item that we give them, it creates a scenario where they prolapse. And I think if we were to either come up with the ability to feed them their natural prey easily, so lizards, or my strategy right now is I get them started on pinkies, but I transition them to small fuzzies as quickly as possible. Okay. It almost looks like it's too big of an item, but if the baby's feeding aggressively, I get them onto small fuzzies, and generally at that point, I don't have any issues with prolapses afterwards. So that's where I'm like, okay, I think that's the root cause on it. Because everybody for years has been, it's hydration. And my babies, all their egg boxes, they get fresh water a couple times a week. There's always water on the lid. There's always water on the sides. And I know they're hydrated and still prolapse. So what else could it be? And to me, I'm just like, it's their food. It's the fact that we're feeding them pinky mice that they just have a really hard time passing it. And some individuals aren't developed well enough to be able to handle that or get past that initial hump in development. That's my thought process on it now.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, when people talk about the pinkies specifically and incompatibility with hatchling snakes. There's the part you're talking about in terms of roughage with the, lack of hair, lack of a feather, lack of a scale, anything like that. But then they're also just full of this bolus of milk, which, is completely tailored for a baby mouse. Not.
There was a good discussion about that online not too long ago, where people were talking about, some people are like, oh yeah, the milk's great. It's more, it's fat, it's protein, it's everything else. And then, you got people like Terry Philp. They're like, snakes aren't digesting that.
No,
the way you think.
I'm half Chinese. You ever heard of lactose intolerance in humans?
So that brings up a good point, right? And this is something that I want to watch going forward, that if I'm feeding pinky mice and if I have a choice, I'm going to select one that doesn't have a white belly. I'm going to select one that's empty, because if you are introducing something that could give the animal diarrhea, you're just compounding the whole problem.
Right. And there goes your hydration.
Right. Yep. So all of that, I think, is playing together, causing these prolapses.
I could definitely see that as somebody that has never had baby green trees, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of in terms of process elimination. It's not water. I'll tell you that right now.
It makes sense.
Yep.
I think I ran into that. So to sort of just throw a little tidbit into what you're saying, I had baby Brettles, and I got them, and same thing. I noticed the diarrhea around the cage, and I was feeding them pinkies because they were so small.
Yeah.
And they won prolapse. And I was like, what? I don't understand this.
Yeah.
Right?
What?
And Nick
told me nothing could go wrong with this species.
He told me that he offers his Brettle like a hopper fuzzy, like a really, really tiny hopper. And I thought that was more along the lines of, just the idea of it sort of, moving around or jumping around or whatever that you would if you're feeding it live, if you have a tricky feeder or something like that. But I don't know. Maybe that's part of it. And maybe he doesn't even know that's what it is. But I just remember that. And I'm like, man, I had a Brettle prolapse. What a bad keeper I am. What the
Jesus. What the hell are you doing over there?
These are supposed to be bulletproof.
Well, and there could be variability.
2009. So, but still.
Just like in people, there's some of us that if they take a sip of cow's milk, they're going to need a new pair of underwear within the hour. And there's some of us that can handle it just fine. There might be variability in these baby snakes as well.
I wouldn't doubt it whatsoever. Another thing I've noticed in clutches that I've produced, and I've also heard this from other breeders, where you'll get a clutch where, and this will all be in the same season. So you'll have one clutch, none of them will prolapse, and they're fine. And then you'll get another clutch where you'll get a run of them. All of a sudden, you'll get a whole bunch of them.
Run with the runs.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think it has to do with something with, the development that they went through, that something just isn't robust yet, and you're feeding them the wrong food item. So you're creating a scenario where things aren't going to go well. And there's no way you're going to know that until you start feeding them. And unfortunately, we're really limited as to what we can feed them. But that may change in time.
Are they too small? I'm not sure to potentially eat like the head of a button quail or something of that nature, or just no shot.
Yeah, they're tiny when they're born. So really like a red hot pink.
Yeah,
about it. Even look like a decent sized meal for them.
Gotcha.
So you got to be, you got to be careful.
Wasn't there a photo? I can't find it. I looked for it everywhere.
Yeah.
There's a photo where they're eating moss, like condor.
I haven't seen it, but I heard about that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I wonder if it's
you need to start breeding moths.
Yeah.
One of those things that's not necessarily true. But yeah, and then I don't know if you guys saw Matt Somerville posted the wild ones in the bush down below, which would, I mean, I don't know. I've never been there, but being from Australia, there's a lot of skinks and stuff running around. So I'm assuming that's what they would be eating. That
they are. Yeah.
Why don't we just produce skinks?
I know. Yeah. Well, there was another podcast recently where people were talking about crested gecko babies actually work pretty well, I guess, for getting finicky eaters to eat. I haven't personally tried it, but it might be one of these things where, if you've got like a really expensive clutch, it might be worth, putting together a small colony and trying it and see. Yeah.
They can be pretty prolific too.
Yep.
I mean, it sucks when you have to wait to incubate eggs for a feeder, but as far as geckos go, cresties will pop them out.
Isn't there, what is it? The tiny little day gecko where the female, she just, she'll just keep pumping. She's parthogenic and they just keep pumping them out.
Morning geckos do that.
Morning gecko. Yeah, that's it. My sister has it. She has, there's like a big jar of them.
Or something too that'll do that, but
yeah.
I don't remember who it was, Eric, but it was somebody on one of your herp history episodes in the last year or two said they would raise pictus geckos for feeder purposes. I don't remember if it was
that Ron St. Pierre?
Ron St. Pierre, maybe. That rings a bell. But it would be good.
I've heard people do it with leopard geckos, crested geckos, that sort of thing. And I think it also, too, I personally tried feeding some frozen thawed baby skinks before and had zero luck with the babies taking it. So I think it could be also that probably needs to be a live food item. Yeah. They probably cue in on the movement a lot, which really helps get them going.
Totally.
Is that a technique you use to actually get them started just in general? Are you sort of like
herky-jerky, that kind of stuff? No. Yeah. So the way I go about it is I've changed what I'm doing with these guys over the years. It used to be that if I had one that wasn't taking food items right away, I'd beat the hell out of them until I get them to strike. I tried to get them angry. I never liked that. I really felt like I was just putting a lot of stress on them just to get a really shitty meal into them. So I just decided the last couple of years that if I've got an animal that is a runner or is shy, and those are the ones that are the real problem ones, right? If you got an animal that's striking and being aggressive, you're going to get it to eat. Okay. But the ones that tuck their head or the ones that the second you touch them, leap off the perch and are running away, those are the real problem childs. So I assist feed those guys right out of the gate. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's, you're putting too much stress on the animal. I'm telling you what, I can knock off a mouse tail or the hind leg of a mouse, and I can grab that snake while it's still on the perch and before it even knows what it's doing and getting that thing in its mouth. And then next thing you know, 30 seconds later, it's eating it. Yeah. And I'm done. And I move on to the next animal. Right. And most of them, like 90% of the animals that I do that with, within a few weeks, they're taking pinky mice on their own. And then I'll get an occasional one where it's 7 months I'll be doing that. Okay. And then just one day you'll know it too, because you'll walk in and you'll go by their cage and all of a sudden they're reacting to your movement and they're in a hunting position. They're caught alluring. They're doing all that. It's like, okay, somebody flipped the switch. This one's ready to go. Right. So you go in with a pinky mouse and they, 9 times out of 10, they take it. And it's an interesting thing. I don't know why some of them are like that, but some just need more time. Yeah. And my whole thing with the assist feeding is I want to make sure that they maintain body weight, and even better if they gain a little bit of weight over time. That's all I need. And then it's just a waiting game at that point. And they all turn on. And I don't stress whatsoever about getting baby green tree pythons to eat anymore. None. Nice. Because it works. Either they eat right out of the gate or I assist feed them and they're going to eat eventually. And it's not a problem.
It's like the blackheads, right?
At all. It's like the blackheads. Stupid blackheads. Yeah.
But that's great, because I remember in the early days of MPR, that was like the thing of like, everybody thought, oh my God. Yeah. I remember Buddy Buscemi telling me like, oh, I can't believe if you have one clutch of green trees, you're going to be busy for days trying to feed these things.
Yeah. Some people still really stress about it. I'm just like, once I started doing the assist feeding, and for anybody that's getting into this and doesn't know, all the terminology and that kind of stuff, I think it's important to differentiate this. Sure. I'm not force feeding these snakes. That's drastically different. Yes. You're not putting a food item in their mouth and then shoving it all the way down their gullet until it gets to their stomach. All I'm doing is I'm putting a food item to the back of their mouth, right? So that, and it's also either a piece of a mouse tail with the hairs pointing out of the mouth, or it's the hind leg of an adult mouse that I've cut. So you got a ham hock with bone and that kind of stuff, a little bit of fur and the fat. Right. I put that in, and I just try to get it in there so it's something that they can't easily spit out. Right. And then, and it's really quick and really easy. And then once that's in there, they'll probably panic for a few seconds and race around the enclosure. But then after a few seconds, they realize like, oh, this isn't going anywhere. I might as well just eat it. And that's what they do. Right. And I don't think it's very stressful on them whatsoever. No. Particularly compared to beating them up for a half hour with, smacking them upside the head and all kinds of stuff to try and get them angry. I don't do it.
100%. That's great. Yeah. What's I know you talked about your feeding, parameters with breeding and whatnot, but with babies, are you going weekly? Or are you going bi-weekly? What's your approach?
Yeah, definitely weekly. Probably about every 5 days.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Is there a time frame to where you would, as we were saying that some of them develop differently, is there a time frame where you start to worry that this hasn't eaten yet? Is there a certain, I remember I had baby carpets that went 6 months without eating and they were fine, but I've had other ones that they went 3 weeks without eating and then they died. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts there?
Well, I've done it a bunch of different ways. So I used to try feeding them before the first shed. And I had success with individuals doing that. I now wait until after. I don't really see the need to race to get them to eat immediately. Sure. And then once they do that first shed, I'll go ahead and try feeding trials immediately after that. Okay. And then, like I was saying earlier, if I get one that is, not being a team player, they go on to assist feeding immediately. I don't wait. Okay. Yep. Gotcha. I know some keepers, they'll wait, they'll really play the long game on those babies to get them to eat and they don't stress it, and I'm sure it works for them. But for me, I'm just like, this works and this is the way I do it,
Is the fact that you were trying to get them to absorb as much yolk as possible tied into the idea of waiting till after they shed so that they could absorb that yolk, or is that just
not really?
Not really.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. Cool. Yeah. Awesome. And as far as the baby setup, you said you just basically water bowl, the perch, and then just kind of 6-quart tub type of deal. Nothing.
Couldn't be more simple. Yeah. I don't use a substrate. I just use a standard Sterilite 6-quart tub, water dish, 8-ounce deli cup, one of my perches in there, and that's it. Nothing else. And my personal opinion is that's the way you should go, particularly if you're a new keeper and you're just getting into these guys. Right. There's definitely been this huge push towards bioactive across the whole community. Right. And I'm not really against bioactive per se. I'm not sure if it really is the best fit for green trees, specifically the bioactive part, because I don't really know what it is that you're trying to accomplish by having like a cleanup crew and stuff like that with, a bioactive soil and those sort of things. Green trees go to the bathroom so infrequently, that's really not a concern for me. But anyway, my point on this is that when you're a new keeper and you haven't kept green tree pythons before, there are things that you just don't know and you won't learn until you've been keeping them for a while and you've had a lot of time doing observation, so that you become intimately familiar with this is how this animal is supposed to be. And when I see this behavior that I've never seen before, that might be a reason for concern, right? And if you're a new keeper, you're not going to see that sign and recognize it. And so if you're keeping them in a really elaborate setup as a small baby and these kind of things start going a little bit wrong, that's where green trees are different from carpets and a lot of the other snakes. They don't handle the stresses as well. So once they start down that slippery slope, it's a lot more rapid for them than it is for other species. So I think if you're a new keeper, your best bet, go sterile, keep them in a really simple setup until you become really familiar with them and the animal is fully established. And then once you get your feet wet and you want to start experimenting with husbandry and how you want to keep them, and because now you know what the signs are to look for, you're going to be much more successful that way. And I think people just need to exercise a little more patience. And that's the name of the game of green trees anyway, is patience. Right? So don't rush into things. Do it the way that has been shown to be successful for a very long time now until you get, really comfortable and understanding what you're doing. Then go ahead and try experimenting with stuff. That's my advice to people getting into this.
Yeah. I'm curious, why no substrate? Why no paper towel or anything? Just
I don't have the
make
need.
It easier, right?
Yeah,
okay.
The babies, they go to the bathroom so much compared to the adults. It's like almost daily, if not every other day, they're going to the bathroom. And my routine is I keep them in that, and then I've got a utility sink with blazing hot water and with a hose. So what I do is when it's time to do a cleaning, I just take the perch out, set them aside, and I bring the tub over, and I just give it blast it with hot water, and then I'm done.
To me, that is the best thing about green trees is that you can just take the perch, put it on the table.
They're not going anywhere.
They're not going nowhere.
No.
Adults, there's the perch, put it on the table. Take a couple pictures while you're waiting for the tub to dry or the cage to dry,
Yeah.
And they're just sitting there chilling, Any other snakes are going on?
Oh, my God. No, yeah. They're running all over the joint.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
I did used to do that when I had the Uru. I would just put her on the table.
Yeah. That's it.
See how long she'd go.
Was it you that had the one that got out and went up to the top of your... No, it wasn't you. Okay.
Well, I had a breadlie do that, but if you're talking about green trees, it wasn't me.
Yeah. And it just perched up on like the
on curtain rack.
The curtain rack or something, just right up there in the thing. Okay. Nice. All right. Let's see. Where are we at time? Okay. You said, I want to circle back to this because I know I think you've talked about this with Justin before, the rain chamber. Are you still doing the same setup? Like I know you used to do it with the shower, right? Or something like that?
No, the way I do it is I have one of the large Cambro tubs and all I have is a Mist King hooked up to it with two nozzles on opposing ends facing each other. And then I'll put one of my standalone perches in there, and I'll transfer the female from her regular enclosure into this, and then I just allow the Mist King to do its job. And I will let them, and I use a 5-gallon bucket with water that's like 78, 80 degrees.
Okay.
And,
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, and I'll hit them with that until they go. Generally speaking, they'll go probably within the first 10 to 15 minutes that I put them in there. Sometimes it'll be an hour or so before they do. If I put them in and they're more interested in drinking, that's when they'll kind of hang out for a while and just enjoy the shower and get some water and that kind of stuff. And then eventually they go.
Right.
Some people are against it. They don't see the need. I personally, my philosophy on this is they're an animal that comes from the rainforest. They're used to getting rained on. I think people really shied away from it because of the whole respiratory infection, worry and that sort of thing. And I think we went too far in the other direction. Yeah. And we keep them very dry, or at least a lot of people keep them very dry. And what I've noticed is that when you've got a tropical rainforest species that is used to a seasonal fluctuation in rain, during the dry season, are snakes easy to find? They're not, right? They're camped out and they're not moving a lot during the dry season, which means they're not going to the bathroom a lot either. And I think that's what's happening with green trees in captivity oftentimes is that we keep them so dry, they don't get stimulated and they don't move around as much versus when you wet them. And years back, this got me thinking because somebody put a video up where they showed the activity of their animal at night in a dry enclosure versus one that they sprayed. And the amount of activity was exponentially different in the one where it was sprayed at nighttime. Wow. So that tells me that it's a stimulation for them
Sure.
that they look for. It's a cue. So, and it could be a number of things. One of the theories is that they're just more active, and that's what makes them go, which certainly could be part of it. The other part of it is that while it's raining, it could be that, when they drop a load, that it's going to be a lot more difficult for a predator to smell them out and to find out where they're camped out if they just went to the bathroom.
Right.
A lot of animals, you'll notice, go to the bathroom when they're hit with rain, like tortoises and things like that, respond to that stimulation. So it's just my own personal thing. Yeah, right. Right in the shower.
Yeah.
So that's just something that I've incorporated in my husbandry, and I really only do it with the females that I'm feed cycling generally.
Okay.
And one of the things that I would like to do going forward is I would like to introduce some rain nozzles into the actual enclosure and set up a drain system so that I could, once a week, just let it rain for a couple hours, and then let it drain out and dry out and, that sort of thing. So I think that's part of our husbandry that would really benefit from people experimenting with and seeing if they can improve things even more. And I know there are people who spray their animals on a regular basis, and they say that they don't have any issues with their animals holding. So to me, that just seems like either you spray or maybe come up with a methodology to rain on them periodically would be very beneficial, I think.
I'm sure it varies amongst keepers of green trees, but when we talk about spraying, to your point earlier, just making sure that we're clarifying stuff, like, are they using like one of those pump things and spraying the animal like that?
Yeah, probably.
Is that typically the way to go?
Or just like a hand sprayer, one of the other.
Okay, so either one.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I was just wondering if it would be, I don't know. It seemed like for me, especially when I'm doing the geckos and stuff, it's kind of like you're spraying them, and it's like, I don't know, it'd just be so much easier if it was one of those
Miss Kings or something.
Yeah. That kind of thing. You just pump it away. And I was all, do you do too much? I kind of think, I don't know, you tell me if I'm crazy about this. I think that like it got me thinking just for myself, right? And when we go into the winters up here in the Northeast, it typically gets very cold. We're running the dry heat. And that dry heat dries out my lungs to where my, everything in my whole, system is just like, I wonder if a lot of those respiratory infections were coming from the fact that they were too dry, which seems to be counterintuitive to the thing. It's usually you would think, oh, it's too wet, but it's really wet and cold that really cause issues. It's not.
Yeah, it's wet and cold, not keeping the enclosure clean.
Yeah.
And then, there was a long period of time where we didn't know NIDO existed.
Well, yeah.
And so you had that mystery element going on in the background that people were like, oh, yeah, don't spray. You're going to get a respiratory infection guaranteed. And it was probably a lot of that happening.
Sure.
That because they were cold and wet allowed that virus to, do what it likes to do.
Sure. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, good point.
Because there are a lot of keepers now that are spraying on a regular basis, and I don't see anywhere near the number of people complaining about respiratory infections that you used to see years ago.
Yeah, they're spraying healthy animals.
That's changed a lot.
Yeah.
Spraying healthy animals. Well, that's a good one. I think it's the same thing with the bioactive stuff. Like, I think that like somehow this idea that bioactivity has gone into our hobby, and people think that that's the pinnacle of keeping and care. And like, to me, what you're saying, it fits more in line with what the animal actually needs, even though it doesn't look like the fancy jungle. I'm not against the fancy jungle. I like looking at the fancy jungle.
Fancy jungle is harder to keep up with.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a whole nother skill set you need to develop, right?
Yeah.
In order to do it right. So just to add a little more onto that topic, that whole bioactive, is there even really like a good definition of what bioactive is, right? So, my thought process is bioactive works great for dart frogs, right? And things like that. Green trees, I don't think you need to go to that same extent, but you can still get the same benefits of having a beautiful planted enclosure. You just have to go about it a little bit different. You know, you don't need that active substrate with the isopods and everything else.
Right.
But what you can do is you can set up a substrate of like dry leaf litter. And you can strategically, you can create things to house live plants so that the snake can't like uproot them and that sort of thing and create the appearance of a jungle, but is also something that's also really easy to keep clean and maintain. Yeah. And you avoid the other pitfalls that, you know, don't work well with green trees. They don't need to have a wet, soggy soil and that kind of stuff, because that's not where they live their life in the wild, right? They're suspended above the soil for only a few hours, you know, at night. And then they're roosting up in the trees during the day where there's a lot of fresh air, there's sunlight, there's all kinds of stuff. So I think by doing a bioactive in a small enclosure, which all of them are compared to the wild, I think you're potentially setting up a scenario that, you know, you may get away with it for a while, but there's a chance it's going to catch up with you too. And I would rather not, you know, gamble with that. Yeah. But you can get something that looks like bioactive, like identical to bioactive, but isn't. Right. You know? And I think 100%. That's where people need to start focusing and experimenting with. You can really create some cool stuff, I think.
Yeah, and just species specific as well. You know, like to your point, what's going to work for green tree isn't necessarily going to work for you know, something else. So okay. I wanted to I guess what are we at? 140. Okay. Let's talk about these. I had the name down until now. Wamena arubiax.
Wamena rubiac.
Yeah. That's been a really good clutch this year. They hatched out really big and robust. Yeah. Super dark red. Every animal in that clutch ate immediately when I started feeding trials. So it's one of the best ones that I've had yet. And again, the Wamena arubiac, the male I bought as an unchanged Wamena from Bushmaster. And of course, you know, that's a term or a locality that I think most people know. It's not really a place that they're collecting animals from. So you don't really know where they're originating, but they'll label them as Wamena. But they're going to be in the same, you know, rough clade or whatever as like Jayapura and those types of animals. So they're going to have that white tail or a green tail as an adult. They're still going to have blue markings on the dorsal.
Is that Pulcher as well or no?
No, that's that Uterensis, I think it is.
Uterensis.
Or I can't remember exactly the name.
That works for me.
So that's where they originate from. Okay. And then so that's my male. And then the dam, I bought her. This is one of the ones where I got a little bit burned. I bought her as an unchanged Aru baby. But then as she grew up, Patrick Holmes put the bug on my ear saying that he didn't think that was pure Aru. And when I really started looking at it more closely, you know, I think I tend to agree with him. Even though when he told me at first, I'm like, all right, dude, you're entitled to your opinion, but you know, this is what I was told when I purchased the animal. Yeah.
Leave me and my snakes alone.
Yeah, but I think he was right. You know, when I look at him, you know, there's definitely there looks to be Biak influence in that animal. So I'm just saying that they're a Rubiac. It looks like it. And then so yeah, that's what resulted in this clutch. And this is the one where I've been the most curious about to see what's going to happen when they really start going through their color changes, because there's a lot going on between those two animals. And it can, with Wamena, there's been some really interesting results for whatever reason. That subspecies or locality, when you start doing species crosses or locality crosses, you can get some really wacky stuff that starts popping out. And so these guys, they're still a complete mystery. They've just now started to do some of their color change, but I have no idea what they're going to turn into. So,
oh, that's so much fun.
Yeah, well, it's fun. But I'll tell you what, in terms of like trying to sell them,
yeah,
difficult because you don't have anything to show for it. Because this is the first time I've paired them, so nobody knows what they're going to turn into, and I think people tend to be a little more reluctant to spend the money when they're like that. But I know just from looking at these, they're going to be phenomenal when they're adults. I just know it. But it's just a matter of I got to wait. And I even dropped the price on them recently just because I'm trying to get people to nibble on them more to get them because these animals are some of the best ones I produced yet, just in terms of being as solid as they are and robust feeders and the way that they look. The male, some people don't think that this is a true thing or not, but he's a dominant red male. So he was paired with a yellow female, and every baby that was produced was a nice deep maroon red. So, when you've got a dominant red like that, whatever you pair them to, everything's going to come out red. And that's what happened with this clutch. I'm just right now, it's a waiting game. I'm waiting to see what these animals do.
Are you going to hold on to a good amount of them, you think?
No, I'm selling most of them.
Okay.
I have most of them up for sale, and I have one, maybe two individuals that I'm holding back that look just like all the others. So I just want to see what happens.
Well, I can't help but notice you don't have Manokwari in there yet. So,
right. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can get you the MPR bump. I think
reptileperch.com.
That's right.
That's right. I don't know. To me, that's always sort of it's sort of the gamble you take with chondros, right? You purchase a baby that you think, came from crazy parents, and then it turns out to be a green snake. Yeah. Or you have two green snakes that produce some crazy looking, thing. But, with all the stuff that's going on in this, I mean, talk to me about like the future. Like if you were going to buy one of these animals to do a pairing, I mean, you kind of have a lot of powerhouse things within that one animal that you could sort of work with designers, right? I mean,
absolutely. Yeah. You've already muddled it up. So now it's just a matter of what phenotype is going to pop out from these guys. And that'll help guide you as to how you want to pair them in the future. But generally speaking, they're technically not just a straight locality cross because one of the animals has already been crossed with something else. So you're dipping your toes into that designer realm. And if these things develop into some really cool looking things, then they're going to be great for mixing in with other stuff going forward,
Yeah, 100%.
Now I'm excited.
Don't sleep on them.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. I remember in my early days, right? When I first was getting into snakes, it was sort of like this idea that, like, especially with specific pairings, and you can't find those animals anymore. And I'm sure this is the same in the chondro world as well. But you had specific lineages of the animals that were being produced at your time frame, that you're in it and purchasing animals, and they may not do that pairing again, that one of the animals may pass the next. You never know what's going to happen. So like when that animal's there, you got to jump on it. Like if you really want to, get into it, I'm not saying go and clear out the house unless you want to buy all of them. I'm sure, David, you'll be okay
by all means.
But I don't know. I think I don't know how that is with other people, but that was one of my rules. Is just like if there was a pairing, or if there was something that intrigued me, or I thought that there was potential with it, I'm just going to jump on it and take it. I mean, that's how I got like 80 IJs at one point.
Yeah.
Just like, oh, this one looks cool. Oh, this one has a look. Oh, this one has a look. And then sometimes they didn't develop. And then other times, they did. Like I still think of that one IJ you had back in the day. Oh my God. It's one of my favorite one. Yeah, I love that snake. Yeah. You should have seen this one. Lucas, holy shit.
Send me the pictures later.
Yeah. Whew. Beautiful snake. Beautiful. All right. I don't know. Is there anything else you guys wanted to hit on? I think this is a great talk. And
it's been great. Is there anything you want to talk about with the perches or any of the products non-living that?
I mean, I'm chugging along. I'm like right out straight with those things all day, every day. pretty much. Surprisingly, that's been the most surprising thing about it. Who knew that many people needed snake perches, but they do.
Yeah.
It has been growing year on year. And I think I heard, Eric, you say this one time, you don't go into business, you grow into business.
Yep.
And that has definitely been my experience with this. And year on year, It's been growing, and I love it. It's great.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. We will put the links to everything in the show notes. So if you want to go and check out the Reptile Perch, you definitely can do it. And I have some of your stuff in my baby racks. I use it for the baby carpet. I love it. Cool. I use them for scrubs. The thing that I loved about them is that they sort of were stood up, and I used to use a paper towel roll that would go across the whole thing, and it was perfect because it would sit right underneath of it.
That's
and it would
a great
allow
idea.
them to thermoregulate. Obviously, chondros are probably staying up on the top, but for other snakes and pythons, you could use that. It was great.
The only thing I'll add, just going back to what you were saying, Lucas, on perches, and this is a selfish thing for me. I'll say it up front. But even if the animal isn't known to be arboreal, they tend to like having things like that in their tub. Or enclosure. So, if
I was
you're thinking about it, you should chuck something in there. Even if it's not for me, you should put something in there.
Well, you double the space of that enclosure, right? Now you have two levels. You have
usable space.
Yes, and now they can, if it's they want to be a certain temperature, they can go up to the top. If they want to be more down, if you're using heat tape or whatever you're using,
muscles, use it or lose it. We want buff baby snakes. That's what David can help you with.
And the other thing that I thought was, oh my God, it was a lifesaver. I have to tell you the story. Like way back in the day, I used 16-ounce deli cups as my water bowls, right? And I was trying to think of a way that I didn't want to use like bowls that you put the cup in.
Right.
So I would take the one deli cup and I would zip tie. I would like poke a hole in the bottom of the tub and I would zip tie it and try to get it like real snug so that the one stood there so I could just take, keep it that as the holder, so to speak. And then you made the purchase with the holder in it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes. Because sometimes that became a pain in the ass with like pulling the tub in and out and whatnot. But, that was a lifesaver. So,
absolutely.
I thank you for that. So if people wanted to follow you, where can they find you as far as social media and stuff?
So the Reptile Perch on Facebook, I'm pretty active on there still, and also on Instagram, the Reptile Perch.
Okay,
both of those I use on a regular basis.
Awesome. Okay, and then it's reptileperch.com.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And you can get the perches and the chondros at the same spot.
You can.
Right. Okay.
One-stop shop.
Right. Awesome.
I saw you even have an enclosure available these days for helping folks out with their first, maybe baby green tree or something like that.
Yeah. Thanks. What I tried to do is replicate a single cubby of a rack. So if you're somebody who's just getting into snakes and isn't going to have 40 of them and doesn't want to buy a rack, but you want to keep green tree pythons, one of the things I probably should have mentioned earlier, when you're buying a green tree from a breeder,
put it right in a 4-footer, right?
Right, exactly. The best thing you can do is try and replicate how the breeder was keeping that animal to the point that you're taking it home. And generally speaking, that's in a rack where in a tub setup. And green trees tend to be more sensitive to changes. And you want to minimize the number of changes as much as you can when you're bringing a new acquisition home. So all I tried to do was replicate a single cubby of a rack with a pull-out tub.
That's so good.
And one of my perches and a little snake hook and things like that, just to try and make the transition as seamless as possible for people. Because there wasn't really anything like that on the market before. So
no, I mean, I've been in that situation with baby carpets, and the best I can tell people is find something small at Target, and don't drill a hole too big.
It would work for carpets too, right?
Oh, absolutely, all of them. Yep.
Okay. So now we're sending them there. So thanks for doing that.
Cool.
Right on. All right, David, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us. And
thanks again, guys. Yeah,
100%.
It's a blast.
And in place of Owen, we'll see you next time for another episode of Morelia Python Radio. Good night.